welcome back to the Shoogly shed for an episode that I mentioned last time, which is doing the brakes for the GS500. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to be interested in that, but apparently you are, so I'm making this video. The objective today is to basically strip down the front and back calipers to their constituent parts, ready for getting them powder coated. I was going to paint them, but the problem with painting them is that if you get any brake fluid on them, it'll strip it in an instant. So powder coating is a little bit more resilient to chemicals. It will still damage powder coat if you leave it on long enough, but it is a little bit more resilient, so that's my plan. Strip them down, ready for powder coating, and then I'll need to get new seals and things like that to put them back together. We need to also check out the condition of them and see if there's any parts that need replaced, because they're pretty grubby. Okay, so these are the brake calipers I have. This is the front one. It's an okay condition. It's pretty crusty around the pistons, so I need to pull them out, see what condition they're in. Generally pistons, you can usually get away with quite a lot with pistons because they're really hard metal, so with a wee bit of polishing they usually come up alright, so we'll check them out. That's the bracket for it. This is the back one here. It's actually in much better condition. If you gave this a scrub, it would probably actually come up quite well. You could probably use it as is, but if I'm getting one powder coated, I might as well get both. There's even a set of pads in there. That piston's almost all the way out, so we'll need to pop them both out and have a look and see what condition they're in. Anyway, that's the job for today. That handy little tool you saw me using there is a blind bearing puller for anyone interested. You can get sets of them for pretty cheap on eBay. This is like a really cheap Chinese one, but it functions quite well, and it basically can grip the inside of this. You tighten it and it expands, and you can slide them out. They're actually not too bad. They're a bit grubby, but they should polish up quite nicely, so I'll do that in a wee bit just to make sure that they're okay. But yeah, like I say, a bit crusty, but perfectly usable, I think. Inside the caliper is pretty crusty, dried out, crust up brake fluid, so that'll all need cleaned out. The seals there will need popped out as well, and then just dismantle the rest of it, and that should be good to go for this one. There's not a lot to this one, single-sided double piston caliper, so that's a bit easier to do. So that's that one completely stripped down. That's the seals taken out. They're looking pretty grubby, so they'll need replaced. Essentially these calipers are quite straightforward because they are just one piece. This caliper, a little bit more complicated. There's two pistons, one on each side. So these are like opposing pistons. So you need to actually split this caliper into two halves. So that is the next job, to break down this caliper. A quick point is that these are made of cast aluminium, and using a sharp instrument like that to remove seals, you need to be really careful not to scratch or ding the edges in here where the seals sit, because if you compromise that sealing surface, there's a good chance you might get a leak next time you build these. So just be really careful, just only try and use the sharp bit on the rubber, not on the metal. So the design of these calipers isn't great. You've got these steel pins here that go through from this side into a recess on this side, and essentially they kind of hold the pads in place. They're made of stainless steel, but this is on your back wheel. It just gets full of crap, and essentially they just seize in place eventually if you don't absolutely cover these in copper slip when you assemble the brake. So these ones are pretty darn stuck. There are a few different ways of getting them out. You can try with a lot of force to grip these with a set of like mole grips, like I did a second ago, and you might get lucky and they might just pop out. Or like me, they might just be absolutely welded in there. So this is a tip that I've seen elsewhere online. Essentially they push in from this side, but this is cast aluminium, so you can drill a very small hole through this side until it hits that pin, and you'll know you've hit that pin because the drill bit will stop eating so easily. It'll fire straight through that aluminium and then it'll hit the steel and it'll stop. you basically want to drill a hole that's slightly smaller than the diameter of the pin, and then you can get a drift or a punch into that hole and knock the pin out from that way. That way when you reassemble the brake, it should be easy enough to pop those pins in from this side, and if the hole you've drilled is a small enough diameter, the pin won't go all the way through the hole you've drilled. That's the theory. A bit scary drilling a hole into a caliper, but it's the only way to get these things out. The design is pretty poor, so I think that's probably what I have to do. Cool, so we've got two tiny holes on the opposite sides from the pins going in. Just need to drift them out from this side now. Cool, so that's the pins out. As you can see, they're pretty manky. I'll see how well they clean up, but I might need to replace them. But essentially, once you've done that, you're left with these just little holes in the back of the calipers that just go into the recesses where those pins go for future use. What I would suggest is when you reassemble these is just packing a bit of grease or something into there, into the wee holes, just to give it the best chance of sealing and stopping corroding again, making it easier to remove the next time. Pads are totally shot at, so they're going in the bin. That's fine, expect to replace them anyway. So the next thing to do is to split the calipers in two and get the pistons out. So the first piston is quite easy to remove because you can essentially get a punch or a drift and push it out through the, I was going to say hose hole, that sounds wrong, but the hole where the brake hose bolts onto, the hose hole, we're going to call it the hose hole. So we'll do that first. So the caliper is now in two halves, and that one, as I said, is quite easy because you can push it out. This one is a bit more tricky because it's obviously sealed at this side, so getting this out can be a bit of a guddle. Oh. Jesus. Well, that absolutely fought me, but it's out. You can see this dust seal on the outside had bulged, and what happens is just dirt from the road gets in, like salt, and when it dries, salt crystals just push these seals out, and that seal basically, the recess where that seal's meant to sit is just totally caked with salt. So I'm really chuffed to have got that out, but that will need a serious clean. You can see the piston as well, it's just caked in salt, so hopefully these will clean up alright, we'll find out. Look at that. You don't want to sprinkle it on your chips, but that is essentially what that is, it's just road salt. So that will all need cleaned out thoroughly before these get powder coated. So that's the calipers split down to their constituent parts, the front one and the back in its two halves. You take the bleed valve out, but that's alright. I'm going to go and clean all these and get all that salt out of there. I'm probably going to soak them for a while as well, just to help clean out all the passages and that kind of thing. But essentially I'll clean these and then they'll go away to get powder coated before we reassemble them. So I shall tune out now and see you again when they are done. Alright, so it's a couple of weeks later and I have everything back from powder coat. That's looking fresh. Pleased with that. Lovely. I also have seals and rebuild kits for both calipers. I've also polished up the pistons nicely. So the next job is just to reassemble everything, which is the fun part, the enjoyable part. Okay, that's the front one done. We've got brand new pads, all powder coated, nice stainless bleed nipple as well, so hopefully that won't go all manky like they usually do. Eagle-eyed viewers may have seen that when I installed the pistons, I used this stuff, which is a sort of rubber lubricant. There is an argument to say that you shouldn't use any sort of lubricant when putting the pistons into the seals, because that could get on the other side of the piston into the sealed braking system and contaminate your brake fluid. However, it's a very contentious issue and many people have many opinions on it. My opinion is that if you are exceptionally sparing, the thinnest smear on exclusively the outside of the piston, do not get any on the bottom of the piston, basically the part going towards the inside. What happens is when you push it through the seals, it helps lubricate them, but the seals push that grease outwards and you end up with a little rim of grease sitting on the dust seal in there, and that means it shouldn't really be any grease on the inside, or if there is, it should be absolutely negligible. And that wee rim of grease is an extra layer of protection for your dust seals. So that is my theory, and I know a few other people share that theory. If you don't use any kind of lubricant, that's fine. That's the way you do it, and I'm happy with that. Annoyingly enough, the lovely stainless cap heads that I was going to use to replace these bolts are the wrong pitch. The gap between the threads, if you don't know what pitch means. These I believe are probably 1.5, whereas the originals are 1.25 probably. Don't know if you can see that, but much narrower pitch on these. So, gonna have to order up some stainless versions of these instead. So the back caliper can't be put together today, frustratingly enough. Although it's annoying, it's literally a 5-minute job to reassemble the rest of this caliper. All you've got are a little rubber seal that goes between the two halves there, where the oil port is, which mates up with this side, goes together like that. Bolts go through the middle to hold it together. Pads go in. You can use stainless pins to go in as well. And then that one's pretty much done as well. I will probably just reassemble this off camera because I've waited long enough to get this episode out. So another few days to wait on stainless bolts is frustrating. But we are where we are. Best laid plans, as they say. I always think jobs like this really are the most important jobs on a bike. Brakes are your life. They stop you. They stop you in emergencies, or they just stop you when you fancy stopping. Take care of them and they'll take care of you. It really wasn't that expensive to get these powder coated, and it lasts a long time. I think in total it was about £30 to get both of these calipers completely powder coated in black. It lasts a long time, it's really durable, it's pretty resistant to brake fluid, unlike a lot of paints, so it really is worthwhile. Stripping down brake calipers can be quite a scary job for a lot of people if you've never done it before. I've only done it a few times before, and I know the first time I did it was quite a kind of nerve-wracking job, because you're working with hydraulics and leaks are, you know, gonna happen if you don't get things done properly. But if you buy the correct seals and the right rebuild kits, it's not that difficult a job really. And at the end of the day, if your brake ends up looking like that when you're finished, it's more or less brand new, so you've done a decent job. Brand new pads, everything in there should be, you know, several thousands of miles to go on them. So yeah, if you're going to let's bother rebuilding a bike, rebuild the brakes, and like I say, they'll look after you. Anyway, I hope you'll agree that these look really fresh and ready to go back on the bike and match all the other powder coated and painted and polished parts. Wouldn't be do the bike any kind of service if I didn't put nice shiny brakes onto it. A basic bike from the 90s really does need all the help it can get when it comes to braking. So like I say, I'll get that back caliper rebuilt off camera and then get them on the bike and bled up with some new brake lines as well, just to tick everything off. And then hopefully that's basically the braking system done, ready to go. I've also made a start on the wiring on the bike, which is a bit of a mammoth task. I'm doing 95% from scratch, just because there's so many things I'm taking out of the loom and it's not really worthwhile hacking an already hacked 90s loom to pieces. You might as well just go for fresh with all fresh wires and connectors and things. So that's probably what I'll be doing for the next couple of weeks. And then I can start the bike, I think. Once I've got the wiring done, I've got the petcock and the fuel lines all done up, so literally just needs to get that ignition system set up and then we can get a first start, and I will definitely be filming that, good or bad. We're hoping for good. Good, fingers crossed folks. Anyway, I'm babbling as usual. Give me a like, leave me a comment, and please do subscribe to the Shoogly Shed Motors channel. I really appreciate it. If you subscribe already, thank you very much. You are a legend. If you don't subscribe, why not? Hit that button. Do it. Do it now. You done it? Go on. Good. Okay, I believe you. Anyway, bye.